857 words within range. Here's the script. In December 1900, all three keepers of the Flannan Isles lighthouse vanished without a trace, and investigators still cannot account for the overturned chair, the untouched meal, and the oilskin coat left hanging by the door, on a night their own logbook says the sea was calm. Eilean Mor sits alone in the Outer Hebrides, 7 miles from the nearest inhabited shore. Sheer cliffs, no harbor, no radio. A lighthouse rebuilt in 1899, manned by 3 men on rotation. James Ducat, the principal keeper, 20 years into the job. Thomas Marshall, younger, meticulous. Donald MacArthur, the temporary hand, filling in for a keeper who fell ill and by every account was lucky to miss this posting. On December 26th, the relief boat Hesperus finally reached the landing, delayed 11 days by weather. No flag raised. No one on the jetty. Captain Jim Harvey sounded the horn. Nothing answered but gulls and a door swinging open on an empty tower. The first anomaly waits inside. The kitchen table is set for a meal that was never eaten. One chair lies on its back on the floor as if someone stood up too fast or was pulled away from it. The clock has stopped. The beds are made untouched since morning. Outside, the lamp is clean, trimmed, and ready to be lit, exactly as regulations demanded, but it was never lit the night before. You'd expect signs of panic, of a struggle, of something. Instead, the room looks paused mid-breath, like the men simply stepped out and meant to come right back in a minute. The obvious theory arrives fast, and for over a century, it's been the official one. A storm, investigators said. The keepers went down to secure equipment at the West Landing, and a rogue wave took all three at once, dragging them into the Atlantic before anyone could shout a warning. Robert Muirhead, the lighthouse superintendent, sailed out himself to investigate, and his report leaned hard on this explanation. Sailors vanish in storms. Lighthouses guard against exactly this kind of sea. Case closed, mostly, in the minds of the men who wrote the inquiry. Except the logbook doesn't cooperate. The final entries, written in Ducat's hand, describe a ferocious gale days earlier, ropes torn from their fastenings, a box of supplies hurled off a crane 110 feet above the water, deck rails bent flat by the wind. That damage is real and it's terrifying. But it happened on the 12th and 13th. The entry for the 15th, the day the men are believed to have disappeared, records something else entirely. Calm seas, light breeze, clear visibility. Whatever swept those 3 men off the rock, the keeper's own final words say it wasn't a storm. Nobody has ever reconciled that contradiction. Here is the detail that still keeps investigators up at night. Only 2 of the 3 oilskin coats were missing from their hooks. MacArthur's was gone. Ducat's and Marshall's were still hanging exactly where they'd have left them for the worst weather, meaning at least 1 man, possibly 2, walked out into whatever happened without the coat they'd have grabbed instinctively before facing a storm. That's not the behavior of men racing to fight rising water. That's the behavior of men who didn't think they needed to. Add to that the overturned chair, and a second, quieter theory takes shape. Something pulled at least one of them away mid-task, calmly enough that he didn't stop for his coat, urgently enough that his chair hit the floor behind him. Whatever it was, it convinced 3 experienced keepers, men who had weathered 100 Atlantic gales between them, men who knew exactly what that rock could do to leave a working, occupied lighthouse unlit, unlocked, and empty on a day their own record calls quiet. Every competing explanation collapses somewhere. The rogue wave theory can't survive the calm entry for the 15th, and even if a wave had risen, the West Landing crane sits well over 100 feet above the water. A wave that size would have to defy the sea state recorded that same week. A murder-suicide, floated by tabloids at the time, has no motive, no blood, no weapon, and 3 men who by all accounts got along. Sea monsters and foreign spies were entertained in 1900 newspapers and dismissed by everyone who ever set foot on the rock. Even the simplest idea, that 1 man fell, and the other 2 died trying to save him, doesn't explain why nobody stayed behind to relight the lamp, or why that 1 overturned chair sits exactly where it fell, in a room otherwise left in perfect order. No bodies were ever recovered. No distress signal was sent. The lighthouse itself was never damaged inside, only outside and only days before. 3 men who knew that rock better than anyone alive stepped outside it together and simply didn't come back, on a night the record insists was calm. If the sea didn't take them, what did they walk toward, and why didn't even one of them turn around?